I promised you guys a video. Here we go. Now, one of the things that I did last year was I made videos not just of of me translating the text, but of also me marking the text up because this is a skill that you guys do need to grow in. And I realize that you don't want to grow in this area, but you really need to grow in this area. Okay. We have got to become better, more active Latin readers. Okay. Let me try locking this sucker down. All right. So I always say that the easiest thing to start with is your verbs. Okay. So looking here, we're doing 496 to 500. It's only 5 lines. Let's look at our verbs. Now we remember, what do we need for a verb? Where are my little sticky notes? Darn it. Hold on. Let me get my sticky notes. Okay. So I'm knocking everything over. For verbs, right? There are a couple endings that you need to know. All right. So you should know your O, S, T, MUS, TIS, and T, right? You should know those. And you should know those are the actives. You should know the passive. Ris, ter. Mer, oh, that's a U. Mer, mini, unter. Right? You should know the active side. And you should know the passive side. You should also know the perfect, right? E, oh, isti, it, imus, istis, run. Hopefully these aren't completely new to you. I'm sincerely hoping that you remember them. You may not remember that you remember them, but you do now, hopefully. Those are your basic endings. And so that's really what you're looking for verbs. You're looking for, between these lines, words that end in some sort of verby ending. T's and NT's are still the most popular. So there aren't any on line 496, but on line 497, there are two. We have ex-iat and we have a wicked. All right, so we know those are our verbs. On the next line, we have ferryter. You see the TUR? There you go. All right. Now, I will say what comes up, I think, for a lot of this is this S. You guys are like, well, hold on. Spumes ends in S. I'm like, this is true, but spumes is not a verb. It is in fact an adjective. Okay, and that's where the US comes in. So you've got to be flexible in your thinking, and you can't just look at the ending. You've got to look at the vowel that connects it. So it's usually going to be an AS, an ES, or an IS. Omnis, of course, has an IS, but again, this is going to be a noun, not a verb. So you've got to make sure that when you circle something, it's an actual verb, like it's an action of some kind. So that, and again, knowing your vocab is going to help with that. Okay. We have trahit here. That's going to be a verb. Witty is a harder one to see because that's that first person singular perfect. But the verb itself, wideo, widere, witty, wisus, is one that I've had on your essential vocab list, I think. If not, it should be on your essential. It's one of the most powerful and common verbs in Latin. All right, so you just need to memorize wideo. Okay. Let's see. Where are we? Okay. Ipse ferentem caede eliminate. Okay, those are the only verbs in these lines. All right, so that's a lot of not verbs, which is kind of, exciting, thrilling, terrifying. I guess this one depends on how you say it. All right, let's keep going. All right, so the next thing I always suggest that you do is your prepositional phrases. And if you remember, you have two types of prepositions in Latin. All right, you have the accusative and you have the ablative. So you have those pattern with the accusative. All right, like odd plus the accusative. Okay, which is going to be the underline, or like sub, like arbore. That takes an ablative. All right, so every preposition that you find in, de, sub, per, whatever, is going to take either an accusative or an ablative. You have choices A or B. And that is helpful, right? Because you've knocked it down to just two options. So let's look here again. Now, cum here is always tricky because cum has to pattern with an ablative. If it's going to be a preposition, it has to pattern with the ablative. But if you remember, cum has another option. Cum can be in a cum clause. All right, cum clause is cum plus a subjunctive verb. See if I can get this. Okay. Remember, subjunctive verbs are let's beat a fiat. Now, spumes US is not anywhere near or an ablative of any kind. So because this isn't an ablative ending, this has got to be a cum clause. All right. Those of you who are looking ahead are going, well, exiat is not a subjunctive verb. And then I'm going to remember that, oh yeah, cum clauses can take the indicative as well. And, you know, sometimes I should think a thought through before I say it out loud. But I'm not re-recording it. It was a good learning lesson for us both. All right. So cum here is a cum clause. Let's see. No preposition. In arwa, though, in arwa is now trick in. Okay, in can pattern with either the accusative or the ablative. It can do either one. Oh my goodness gracious me. In plus an accusative equals into or on to. It shows action. Okay, accusative shows action. In plus the ablative equals in or on. Okay, so you have to figure out, is this in plus the accusative or is this in plus the ablative? How do we tell? Well, okay, arwa, many of you are like, well, that looks like it's going to be a long A. It could be ablative. Well, we need to scan the line to be sure, actually, because remember, those ridiculous neuter nouns come up and the neuter nouns can end in A and be accusative. So let's look at this. Omnis, come on, stupid pencil. All right, we're going to try this again. Omnis, and then you know that it has to be a dactyl. Okay, so we have our dactyl and our spondy. This is long and this is long. All right, Farron's long, short, short, long, short, short, and then Ferrantor long, short, short. And what this scansion does, and this is one of the reasons I think poetry is easier because you can scan it. Well, that's a short A. Okay, short A's don't happen in the ablative. So this has to be accusative. And what that tells me is this is also neuter. All right, that happens quite a lot. And this is, again, like one of those, it's very useful information. Okay, this is an accusative. Oh, nuggets. Can I do that? There we go. This is an accusative, plural, and that tells me that this is neuter. And I'm like, okay, so now I have a neuter thing running around in here. All right, good to know. I know that the quay here, remember you can circle it and draw a line because the quay is always translated before, right? And it acts as a little roadblock, which also helps me to sort of break this sentence up a little bit. Now, per omnis. Okay, well, you're looking at omnis and like, well, what the flip-flock is that? Well, remember that the long is is often a long es. So this probably isn't per omnis, but per omnes. And there we go. Now, another thing you can do, I'll pull out my trusty dictionary here, is if you're not sure, you can LMNO-P, look it up, pair, okay? And I'm doing this just to sort of show you what it looks like, because this is an important, oh my gosh, tool for you guys. Oh my God, how many PERs are there? There we go, okay. So goodness gracious me. Pair can be an adverb, can you see that? And a preposition, okay? And it also tells you that it means through, adverb only in compounds, preposition with the accusative. So what's nice about this is, although this is the big dictionary, so honestly, your little dictionaries probably don't give you this much information. This is only for people who spend a lot of time with Latin, you know, like me, too much time with Latin. But the point is you guys can just see that this says accusative in it, ACC. All right. And I point that out because that also tells me that this has to be an accusative. Pair can only take an accusative, except for in, prepositions take either the accusative or the ablative. In is the exception. So because I know pair takes the accusative, that lets me know that, oh yes, this IS is really an ES. And that again is going to be super, super helpful to you as you move through the Latin. All right. Look at this cum stabilis. Remember what we said about cum, right? It needs either an ablative or a verb in the subjunctive. Well, trahit isn't a subjunctive verb, and typically we can tell because it doesn't look weird. But stabulus, and I will just tell you guys now that this is a long IS because I don't have time to go ahead and scan the whole line again. But if you were to scan it, you would notice that it is an IS. Now, I had made this as a cum clause, but one of your colleagues in class was like, I made it a cum, in a prepositional phrase. I'm like, actually, that works just as well here. I'm like, all right, there we go. So it's cum stabilis. And I'm like, that kind of works out. All right, now the only other preposition we have is here in limine. Again, you would need to scan the line. This is much shorter. Where's my pencil? Let's see, we're going to go X long, and then you go, it doesn't matter, short, short, long. That gives us a short E, which makes sense, right? Because it is, in fact, color is this supposed to be? This might be supposed to be pink, and this is supposed to be purple. Whoops. All right, so this would then be an ablative. Okay. We've had limine a couple of times. Now, you guys also have the que here, which is acting as a nice little roadblock, so we know that this goes here. Okay, so we've picked up the verbs and we've picked up a couple of the prepositional phrases. And now we're like, okay, let's look at what's left. And sometimes, oh, here, we can pick up this que too. Goes here. All right. So, sometimes I find, especially when you still have a bunch of sort of lines left and you're still trying to figure it out, go through and pick up the ones that you just know. Okay, if you're looking at this and you're trying to figure out, all right, what do we know? One of the things that pops out at me is this ibus. All right, ibus is a dative or an ablative plural. Remember, your ablative endings are, and this is again something that you should just be able to go through in your head. Ablative endings are long is and ibus. Okay. And whenever I see a long is or an is and an ibus together, I'm suspicious. I bet those two things are going to go together. All right. So when I see an ibis here and a ruptis here, especially since even without scanning, I can see that this has to be a long I because it's followed by two consonants. I'm like, okay, long is, ibis, these two probably go together. How do I tell whether it's dative or ablative? Well, ask yourself the question, is this a living human being? No, it's not. Ruptus means oh my gosh, to burst out, and then agaribus means the steep river sides. We're just gonna call them banks, river banks, okay? And those are things, which means that they're both in the ablative. Okay. And I know they're probably going together because that's the only thing that makes sense. Because there's nothing else for them to go with. Non-seek means not otherwise than. They're just two adverbs, so don't worry about that. But look at spumeos. It ends in US. All right. US, guys, has been US forever. And US is almost always, without fail, nominative singular. And I say almost always because I can't think of a single time when it's not, but there might be. Okay. Omnis, look at the que here. And they exit. And I'm like, all right, what does omnis mean? And if we're not sure, you can look it up. Now, it does mean river. And this is, in fact, in the nominative form. And this is one of those things where you should go back through your dictionary. Do I have a better dictionary? I only have my massive dictionary. Wait, I've got the Collins dictionary. All right, and how can you tell? You go back. If you're not certain, you look it up. A-M. You guys can fast forward through this if you want to. A-M. Why can't A-M-N? So again, you're looking A-M-N. A-M. And you're doing the, like, if you're like me, you're doing a little dance in your head. A-M-L-M-N-O-P. All right, here you go. Right here. Omnis, masculine, river. And that actually answers a lot of questions. First of all, it tells me that the nominative form ends in is, which fits what's on there. It also tells me that it's masculine. All right, which also makes sense because spumeos, US. So that's a masculine ending. So I'm like, all right, I was right. Those two things go together. Look at this. Opistas. You see the AS there? Hopefully you guys remember AS is accusative plural, so we can do that. Gurgite ends in a short E. Okay, do you see that short E? That short E is an ablative ending. This goes with the other ablative endings that you should just long A, long O, short E. Even if you don't have the chart completely memorized, which you should, but just recognizing certain endings. Like if it's a long vowel, guys, it's probably an ablative, and you should just be ready to look for that. Now, there, of course, there are exceptions to every rule, but these general rules of thumb are going to sort of help you out. Moles is interesting. So the ES can either be accusative or nominative plural. What you want to do is look at the verbs. You see it's a T, it's a T, it's an enter, it's a ter. These are all singular verbs. So because they're all singular verbs, right, it can't have a plural subject. Therefore, this is the accusative. All right, ferens, look at the NS. Guys, remember we talked about present participles. NS is in the nominative singular, so we know this is nominative singular. Okay, let's see. Compos, OS, that is also going to be an accusative. Now, I will say here, and the culmino, you see that long O? Let me just do this one. This long O is going to be ablative. All right, so we know that. What makes me suspicious, do you see how the que goes here? This campos is an accusative plural. Per omnes. Per, I told you guys, remember when we looked through that? Per takes the accusative. Omnes is the accusative. Virgil likes to split his prepositional phrases. My instant reaction would be, oh, and omnes is an adjective. He will often put the adjective with the preposition and then the noun nearby. Because you're like, oh, wait, this adjective tells me that I'm looking for an accusative plural noun. Here's your accusative plural noun, okay? And you just drink a link to those together. Okay, so Armenta here. If you're not sure, look at that A. And so the first thing I ask myself, is it a long or a short A, right? And you have to scan your line typically to figure that out. So you can, if you want, go through the whole thing, long, long, and then you do your short, short, long, boom. And then I know that witty, actually, because it's perfect, has to be long. So that has to be long, which means that has to be long, which means that has to be long, which is fine. And then I'm not sure, so this has to be long. Okay, that did not give me the answer that I wanted it to give me. Because I needed to be a short A. It's a neuter noun. And I think I messed up somewhere. But you know what? We're just going to skip over that. Okay. You guys can tell me where I went wrong next time. All right. So witty. Witty has to be short. That's why. Okay. So however you look at it, Armenta is accusative. It's neuter. Okay. Ipse is in the nominative and ferentum is in the accusative. Notice there's a period right here. Okay, so we know that that's a roadblock. We also have the T to the I, the it to the I seeing something. And so we're going from third person to Aeneas. This is also going to be the end of the epic simile that starts up here with the non-seq. All right, so the epic simile ends here. All right, Neoptolemon, again, is accusative. Notice there's a break here. So between this break and the que, this EM and this UM are probably going together. OS is going to be accusative plural. And then Atrides is also going to be accusative. And we've seen this before, right? Geminos, Atrides, remember we've seen that before? The twins of Atreus. And then Kade, short E, is going to end. All right, so I went through that kind of fast at the end, but I did want to walk you guys through my thought process as we mark up these 5 lines. I'm hopeful that it's helpful to you. I know that if I took any longer, you would stop listening. So here you go. You guys can give me your feedback later on when you let me know what you think of this. Do you find the markups helpful or not?